Balin's tomb. This has been one of the most ambitious builds I've ever tackled, bringing to life one of the most iconic scenes from The Lord of the Rings. I've broken it down piece by piece, but in this video you'll see the full journey, from bare foam to a finished tabletop centerpiece. If you want to follow along and make your own version, I've even put together step-by-step plans with all of the measurements that you're going to need. That can be found on my Patreon. But for now, let's dive in and see how I made Balin's tomb come to life. So let's get started with Balin's tomb. So you're going to start with a big sheet of 20mm foam, and you're going to make this into a 60 by 60 piece. I haven't insulted your intelligence by including that in the schematics. Now to do this, you're going to just mark out 60 from each end, maybe put a point in the middle, and then depending on the length of the rule you have available to you, you're going to mark this out and then slowly cut through it, and then a little snap there. And there, lo and behold, you have your base. It's as simple as that. Now, for the walls, you can take the bit that you've cut off, the 60mm piece that's spare. And for me, I've got a hot wire cutter, so I can set this to a 150mm gate, and then run that through. And that was my lengths cut. Now, I did miters on this, and I have got absolutely no idea why. It just made the construction a lot more complicated later on. If you look at the schematics, you can just make two walls 60mm wide, and the other two side walls, which are 560, and just slot it together without the need for those 45-degree angles. So don't do that. I'm making the mistakes for you. Now, to make the sidewalls here, we are measuring 80mm up, and that is the floor height, so nothing in particular happens below that. You saw that I had one of the side floor pieces, and that was to mark out the where the archways are going to go, which I'm cutting out here. The schematic will help you a lot more than me just telling you to use the side piece. So yeah, use the schematic. That's what you've paid the money for. So now the archways, I did them a similar shape to this in the schematic, but I did one that's a lot easier to cut out. I made life incredibly hard for myself with how kind of little I made some of the details, and to be honest, it wasn't really of any benefit. And I think that the one that I've done in the schematic is actually a lot better. So same shape, just a bit bigger. So you're going to do that in the 3 different places on the side walls, on each side wall, and then you're going to do a frame around it just by drawing parallel lines, which are about 5mm away. So just hold the ruler 5mm away and parallel, and just mark it out, and then what I'm doing here in the background in the video, whilst I've been talking about the frames of the door, is to do some horizontal lines 10mm apart for your brickwork, and then we want to be adding the bricks on. Now, I decided that the bricks should be fairly chunky on this, so they are 40mm wide bricks. So what I like to do with this is just to measure 40mm along, and then make the ruler perpendicular and do every other line, and mark that out and do all the way along with that. And then you can do the same, kind of intersecting that to make the bricks knit together. And that's what it ends up looking like. Now, it's all fine and dandy doing it with a knife like that, but you can't see it that well. So then you go over the whole thing with a pencil just to widen all of that to bring it to life a lot more, and ends up looking like that. Now, here is the bit which is going to take the most time with the whole thing. I decided to be kind of movie accurate and to make it look really awesome, to carve runes onto every single wall. So there's a rune sheet included, so you know what Dwarven runes look like. But I'm literally drawing one every centimetre, so every kind of 40mm brick has got 4 of them on it. And I'm doing that across the entire thing. Yep. That took a long time, and I did it on every single wall. And you can do the same, but I swear it's worth it. Put a film on in the background and just get on with it, and it is absolutely worth doing. You can see the results here, and we are going to be going all the way across the whole thing. We're going to be skipping out the door frame, but we are going to be doing the center, which will be cut out a little bit later. And now on to base coating it. So this is a 50-50 mix, roughly, of black paint and PVA glue. This is just cheap black acrylic paint. I'm going to be covering the entire area, and then once that's done, you're just going to leave that to dry. Now, we're going to create the really, awesome stony texture, and with all the variation is to use a sponge on this. So you're going to take a sponge is just like a pull out from a tray of miniature storage things, you know what I'm talking about, and you can just dab it on And what you're doing is you're making sure that the excess is off of it. And what you're doing is you are putting the kind of random sponge pattern on top of the random tinfoil rolling pattern, as well as the runes and stuff. And that really just creates this very random, very cool looking surface. Now, having done this, I decided that it didn't look quite right, particularly with these archways, and I decided they should be set back. So what I did was I cut all the way through with a knife, and then I don't know why I did this, but I decided to use a paper clip for the finer details. I should absolutely have used a mini file. I have a mini file. There's a mini file about 2 meters away from me, and I didn't even think to use it, but it would have created a much better cut. But that's not what I did, but that's what I advise that you do when you do your own one. Now, once you have cut out this piece, it can be sliced in half. I used a hot wire cutter for that, but you could use a sharp knife and some patience, and do a little bit of a tinfoil roll on the inside edge of this frame. And then you want to be putting a lot of glue on all of the edges here, and we are going to be slotting these half depth things back into place, and we're going to leaving that to dry. And I think that the result of that is a much better piece. Now, the front wall is going to require some patience for carving out the door, but it's not overly complicated in terms of the design itself. So to begin with, I'm going to mark out where the front support piece is going. These are like, I think about 20 mil involved. The schematic will show you, but putting those in place will show you exactly where those are going to go. That means that you're not going to be doing some unnecessary runes. Also marking out roughly where the stairs are going to be going. So then I'm going to be using that drawing there to mark out where the door is. So in the schematics, you will see exactly where this is, but it's quite a simple design to put into place because it's a lot of parallel lines all going to the same height, and then the top has got parallel lines as well, so it's just kind of the angle that changes, but it's fairly simple to mark out. And once you have marked it out, it's a case of cutting it out. So we can begin by cutting out the entire door. That's going to be the easiest one to do. So cutting the door all the way out, just with some time and a sharp knife and some patience, and that comes out like that. Now, each of the other different ones is going to be cut to a different depth. So the closer it is to the hole, the deeper we're going to have to cut down. So we're scoring down about a centimeter, I think, and then using a ruler here, I decided to mark out the edge and do it really, really carefully and neatly. You could just do this by eye. And once you've got the idea of how deep you're cutting, you can just go into it like that, and then you can move on to laying it flat. I mean, you could just do all of this with it laid flat. It is a little bit fiddly to try and get into the door to do all this marking, but whether you decide to do it with it laid flat like I'm doing now, or whether you decide to mark it out, the result is the same. Because basically on each layer, you're doing a vertical cut down to a kind of predefined depth, and then you're doing a horizontal cut to meet it. And if you do the horizontal, the horizontal cut is the one which is going to define how good it looks. If you go too deep on the kind of downwards cut, it's not going to matter too much, because you're just going to be cutting a little bit deeper into a bit of foam that's not really going to get seen anyway. So having done that one, you need to repeat the process with the other ones. They're going slightly less far down, seeing my bald spot quite clearly there a moment ago. And so this is about half the depth left, and then you're going to do the same on the last one. Now, you'll see that test piece there I've got for that Dwarven King face. Now, the Dwarven King face is included as part of, as the files here. So I marked out a space in which it was going to be going, and then I marked out where all of the brickwork would be, and I did the brickwork first before moving on to the space where the king's face was going to be. Now, most important thing here is that this is securely held in place. So I just wrapped it around, so you can print it out to the size that you want to wrap it around, and then just hold it in place with some sellotape to make sure it isn't going to be going anywhere. Now, I'll be honest, sellotape doesn't stick particularly well to foam, but it's good enough for a few minutes. And that is literally all it takes. This is probably, I think it was 5 minutes work. Just take a sharp knife, take the smallest blade that you've got, and just cut into the foam on every single line. So if you can draw, if you can use a pen, then if you can trace, then you can do this. You're just cutting through the paper into the foam. Just make sure you're going all the way downwards, and you end up with something that looks awesome like that. And then you're going to take a pencil nice and sharp and just widen it a bit, and it ends up looking like that, which is, again, completely awesome. And I did that on both sides. I put the runes on, and then I did the undercoat as I've done before. And then I've painted the entire thing with the sponge, just like on the other one. And you end up with the front wall finish looking like that. Isn't that awesome? Now, with the back wall, I've done an archway on each side. And the kind of the central bit is just a plain bit of wall, and it has a window in it, and that's where the shaft of light comes in to light up Balin's tomb. Now, I did some rough maths to work out the angle it should go in at, and it turns out that one of the cut-off pieces would be forming the perfect angle for this window. So I didn't want to cut the window straight through. I wanted it to be an angle. So I held this bit of foam up against the bottom and had my knife blade going in at the same angle on the top and the bottom. So it formed this kind of slanted cut through rather than it just being like directly cut through. So I did the top and the bottom first at this angle, and then kind of just filleted the sides so that I could have the shape, and you end up with this window. So that's not straight through, as you can see, it is at an angle. From there, just adding in more bricks, lots of bricks, lots of runes, undercoat it with the black paint, and then sponge it. And that is the back wall complete. Now, the internal walls, they are fairly simple to do, so the schematics will show the exact size they are. Both sets of wall, the front and the back, are the same shape. The difference between the front and the back is that the rear internal walls, as I'm about to show you here, do have an archway cut in them. So I was just messing around and making sure that I had the things set at the right height. Essentially, once you've set the floor height like this, you can then start cutting out the archway. Now, there is a difference between this schematic and, this that I'm making here and the schematic shown. I moved the archway just in a little bit so it doesn't have this kind of flimsy bit at the back. It is more, it's kind of a centimetre to the right, I think, something like that. But it will look ever so slightly different to my one, but I think that it's something that will look better. And once again, it is the different archway shape rather than the one I'm showing here. But again, very, very similar, but you just cut it out like I did there. And then you want to do a frame around it. And then you can go on and do the brickwork. Now, I did the cutting of the shape of it afterwards, and that was because I wanted it to have a parallel line-ish with the archway. So I wanted the archway to be in first, because I kind of made this up as I went along a little bit. But yeah, so putting the brickwork in all the way around, and then doing the front here that has to have some brick pattern on as well. And then you're going to be doing exactly the same thing with the runes and stuff. Now, if you do get any places that don't feel like you've done it particularly well with the lines as I did here, you can just simply cut them out. You can just put a bit of damage onto the brick, and that mistake that you made all of a sudden is completely disappeared. So once the bricks were all done, it was time to add on the runes. So, you've seen that earlier on, just putting lots and lots of runes on. I put a little tiny runes on the door frame. I'm not entirely sure why, because they're so small, they're simply not going to get noticed. But yes, across the whole thing, runes. Then I'm going to follow that up with the black undercoat in just a minute. Obviously, the tinfoil ball roll as well. I did some there. That was my test paste to make sure that looked good. You don't need to do it across the whole thing. So this is true of the rear internal walls as well. Sorry, the front internal walls as well. In that there's a whole bunch of spaces which I put runes on, which you don't need to put runes on. And believe me, with the amount of runes that you have to draw, you really don't want to be doing any more than necessary. So, no, I did runes where the stairs were going to be covering up, for example. Now, instead of runes on this part, I did a zigzag pattern, so just doing a couple of diagonal lines, kind of 45 degrees in one direction and then 45 degrees in the other, just so we had something a little bit different going on, and just so I could not draw some runes from it. But yeah, exactly the same thing with the rear internal walls, in that we're just doing the brickwork and the runes, and then painting the whole thing with the black undercoat before sponging it, as you have seen previously. And that just about wraps it up for these pieces. They really come together nicely. As soon as you put this sponging detail on, it just really brings them all to life, and I think they look fantastic. And that's how you do all of the walls. So next up, whichever bit you want to make really, but that is the first video in how I made Balin's tomb and how you can make your own. Both the upper floor and lower walls are made from 10mm foam, and they're going to be both included in this video. So we're going to cut some 80mm strips for the upper floor, and we're going to cut some 70mm strips for the lower walls, and then we're going to be cutting them to size. So starting here with the upper floor. So I want to make sure that these are the right length. So 2 of them are going to be longer, and when the rear floor at the back is going to be shorter. We can refer to the schematics for all of the lengths on this. And from here, I'm going to make sure that we've got them nice and square, because it's going to be, we want a nice snug fit with all of this. And you can see with the finished result that this is worth spending a little bit of time on, but that's what they're going to look like there. Now, this is the basically the whole thing that you have to do with the upper floors here. Now, this can be a little bit time consuming, but using a set square and using a sharp knife and using a ruler, you can do this fairly simply. What you're doing is you're just cutting out slots that the pillars are going to go into. So just the little square offcuts to kind of 30mm by 40mm. The position is the important thing. So I'm using a protractor there instead of a set square, because someone had stolen my set square, which I later found. You don't need to know that boring story. But we're going to cut these offcuts out of each of the things, and then we're going to make sure that we've got the corners on the other one done as well. So essentially we're just cutting a 10mm by 20mm piece out of the end of each of the back, and that is going to form a nice tight fit for the pillar to go in. So you can see it's slotting in there, and then it comes together like that. So that's obviously upside down, but that is what it's going to look like. Now we want these to look like they are slabbed, so we're going to add some slab detail to the top. So just measuring 40mm in from each edge and putting a few marks and then lining that up. And then this is absolutely perfect to have 40mm by 40mm slabs. So just doing 40mm marks along 2 edges and lining it up like that, and you have a nice square grid pattern that you can use a knife to kind of mark out, and then a pencil to widen, and then rolling over the entire top with the tin foil ball. Also want to do the edge, which is going to be showing as well, but that's what it ended up looking like there. And we then want to take the knife and just do some vertical lines on the front edge, which is visible, just to kind of finish off the slab, and then widen that with a pencil. And we're going to do that with all 3 pieces, and that's what they end up looking like. Now we're going to paint them, so we're going to do our PVA and black paint undercoats. Important to get into all of the details here, because the more details we get down into, the better kind of our contrast is going to be. And we're just going to sponge this as we have with other things. So just deciding on the grey tone that you want to go for. So going over the whole thing in that grey tone, and then doing a tone that's got a little bit more, a bit lighter, and concentrating that more in the middle. So you can see that there are areas which we've been walked on more, which we want to make lighter. Now for the walls, you can look at the schematics and see exactly what sizes need to be cut. And once you've cut these, it's a pretty simple case. Those are the walls that you need to make. I don't know why I bothered standing them up like this, but this is what I did. I think just to make sure that I'd got all of them. And from here, we're going to add brickwork. So we're going to do vertically, every 10mm, we're going to make a mark. And then we're going to line these up, and we're going to draw lines in between them. And that is going to form our brickwork. And then we're going to do bricks which are 40mm wide. So to do that, just measure 40mm, and then on the next one up, make sure that you've got an alternating thing, so that you have a kind of, I think it's called knitted brickwork. From there, you're going to take your rune sheet, or you can just make it up, and it's going to start using a pencil just to mark runes into every single piece, and then you're going to lightly roll it with the tin foil ball. Now, adding all this detail does take some time, but I really do think that it's something that's going to really make the difference. As I said several times before, patience is your biggest skill here. So putting the time into doing the brickwork, putting all of the runes on, which you can do with a film in the background, it all just ends up being very, very worthwhile. From here, you can undercoat it as we have done before with the black paint and PVA. And I don't have any photos of me kind of sponging on the smaller ones, so you can see me sponging it on the big one, just sponging it across as we have on the other walls, and it ends up looking like that, but not that bit, a lot smaller. And then these are the finished walls. This was then prior to me putting it all together, just a dry fit, just to see what it looks like, and yeah, genuinely think it looks awesome. One of the most iconic things about anything Dwarven is having fancy pillars, and I wanted to create these in as simple a way as possible, but still making them impressive. So you're going to need a whole bunch of pieces, which you basically just put all together. I mean, make it sound really simple, but you need 20mm foam, and then you're going to need to cut 40mm widths, and then you're going to need to make it 5mm smaller with each different cut that you make, and you'll see why as we go through the construction of it. You can start with foam, which is a lot slimmer. If you can get like 2 or 3mm foam, that would be really helpful. But if you've got a hot wire cutter, then you can just use that. But to begin, we're going to be going with the heights of the pillars. So there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either cut the heights and have 2 pieces side by side, or you could cut the kind of cross section, kind of the 40mm square, and have a stack of them brought up to the right height. I decided I'd rather have the heights and have it side by side. So that's how I decided to do it. Now, once you've got one of these, this is a 40mm bit of foam here. So a mark halfway across it, then the same distance down. So 2 centimeters from the center and 2 centimeters down, and then cutting between that. And this is just to create a point in the middle of it. And you're going to do that across lots and lots of the 40mm ones. So you can use the first one you do as a template for the other one. It depends what level of accuracy you want to work from. Obviously, using a template is going to be slightly less accurate, but you're going to do that with all of the different sizes. And you can see the schematics, so you can see a bit more what I'm on about. But you're going to have 40mm ones, you're going to have 37.5mm ones, 35mm ones. And once you've done all of those and you've cut them into a point, then you're going to cut them down into slivers like I'm showing you here. And you're going to be doing this with every single one. There are so many pieces for this. I think... so you're going to need 160 pieces, I think I worked out it is in total. So yeah, that's a whole lot of pieces to be cutting. So now moving on to the center pillars and the corner pillars. So in this video, I was showing you the construction of all the little pieces and then chucking it all together. So right now I'm cutting the top and bottom parts of pillars. So these some are 40 by 40 and some are 40 by 50. So the 40 by 40 ones form the bottom of the pillars, and the 40 by 50 ones form the top of the center pillars. And with the 40 by 50 ones, I just cut a 45-degree angle off one of the short ends, so it has a nice kind of slant for the top of the pillar. Forms a nice way of just making it look a little bit more fancy, shall we say. So that is all of the pieces getting cut for all of the pillars, and then we need to glue them together in one way or another. So like I said, I'm doing mine side by side. You could do yours as a stack. So roughing up the sides to improve the adhesion between them, and just leaving them to dry. So that's one of the 40 by 40 cross section for the top of the pillars. This one is a 30 by 30 for the corner ones, and there's just ones which are 20 by 30 for the central pillars. Now the stacks here, you can see that I'm making, you're going to need to make 32 of these, so 32 big pieces, and then stacking up the sizes, putting some glue between them, and I'd say glue them first and then concentrate on the alignment rather than trying to make each one perfect as you're putting it down. Now, I strongly recommend you leave them to set overnight because you want them to be absolutely solid before you glue them onto anything. So once they're ready, you can sand the side of your pillar cores here, slap some glue on the side, on each side in fact, and then add one of the stacks to each side. Now, it's important to note here that the accuracy of your points and stuff does not have to be perfect. They're definitely not perfect on mine. But once you've done the other few stages with them, they look so good that no one, not even yourself, not even me, who I'm hypercritical of my own work, not even me is looking at my pillars and going, well, that point isn't perfect with the other one. It just isn't how you end up looking at it. So there's 8 of these pillar tops that you're going to need to make, and once they were in place, I just chucked them on the radiator to improve the drying time. So that's what those ended up looking like. Now, with the these are the central pillars here, so you've got your 20 by 30 thing here, and then you've got little slivers here, which are 2.5 mil bigger with each one, and again, you're just going to be stacking them up on the side. So you're adding 3 of these in increasing sizes to each side of the pillar, so that you end up with this stepped look through to like the central core of it. So just stack them up first, and you can see, and then align them as I'm showing you right here. So doing that on that side is pushing them down so that they are in alignment with the bottom. A little tap there apparently as well. And then doing the same thing on the other side. So smallest to biggest. So you have this stepped front look. And once, you can use a straight edge like a ruler here, as I'm just showing you here to there. And then this is a reminder to myself to tell you to put weight on them. And then that's me pointing them to say, do the other pillars. Now, with the corner pillars, you have a 30 by 30 core to it, and then you are, creating the stack here. And the only part of the pillar that actually gets seen here is the stepped bit in the middle. So that's what you're working towards. You're working so the biggest up to the smallest on this one, rather than the smaller up to the biggest, which you're seeing on the other ones. And yeah, essentially all you're doing is creating this kind of this stepped look at the corner. So glue on first, and then put them all on first, and then do the alignment, and ends up looking like that. But like I said, you only see the stepped bit. Now, once the core centers are dry, you can do the top and bottoms of them. This is only on the center and the corner ones. So I kind of scratching up the bottom there, so just to improve the adhesion, and then just gluing a 40 by 40 thing to the bottom, and then a 40 by 50 with the slant onto the top, and then applying some weight on it. So what I do with my one, once I've done all the pillars, I put a bit of wood on top, and then put some weight on top of that wood, just to really make sure that you're getting some good adhesion with them. Now, with the with corner pillars, it's a 40 by 40 on the top and the bottom. So that's what you want to be doing with those ones. So yeah, get all 8 pillars like for the bottom, and then put the weight on them as I'm showing you here. It's that simple, and just leave them to dry. I think I put an upside down stool on top of it, and then to add detail to the corner pillars and to the central pillars, I'm using this pencil with a bit of tin foil on the end, just to get into the details and to crush down the corners a little bit. I mean, if you want to be having gentle pressure, so that you're beginning to just make it look a little bit kind of rugged and stony. You don't need to be fully crushing it and destroying it. Now, I decided to do a zigzag pattern on the top part and on the bottom part, rather than more runes, as you will have seen on the walls. So all I'm doing is just drawing putting a mark. I mean, I was more neat and accurate than I probably needed to be with this, because I was there measuring out lines and things. But ultimately, you can just put some zigzag lines in it and then widen it with a pencil, and it ends up looking pretty decent. I went to the effort of actually measuring it on this one. I think I was trying to show off and show that I'm work harder on things than I actually do. Normally, with stuff like this, I'm just going to eyeball it. But very simply, I measured in a centimetre, every centimetre interval, and then did diagonal lines to meet up with a similar but stepped centimetre line at the bottom. Was it worth the effort? Probably not. It's probably easier just to do it by eye. But yes, widening it with a pencil, and then the next stage after that is to then grab your rune sheet, or maybe you just want to do it completely without that, and you just want to do some chunkier runes on the front of the... We don't have to do it, but I think it looks really nice to have these bigger runes carved into the pillars. I don't care what it says. I haven't looked up what these letters mean. It is purely for aesthetic value. So doing that with a knife and then widening it with a pencil, and I think the end result is one which is pretty decent. So that is how you are going to be doing that. And it ends up looking something like that, with a flappy tail coming in there last minute for some reason. But yes, we're going to be doing that across the all of the other central pillars. So putting in the zigzags, putting them in the runes, and that is them finished. And they end up looking really good, I think. Now, the corner pillars don't need as much attention. All we're doing this is just getting tin foil, pencil end, and just adding a bit more detail to the step thing, and then putting the zigzags on there. And then you can do a bit of stone rolling on the top. We decide which part is the top of the pillar, and that can be crushed using the tin foil just a little bit, just to add that texture in. But yeah, nothing too complicated with those, and you could arguably not do any of it. But I feel like it's worth the couple of minutes effort that it takes to do that. Now, to finish off the pillar tops, we're going to be doing brickwork on them. So arguably this should have been done before they were all glued together, but that's not how I did it, because I thought of it afterwards. Because I'm making the mistakes for you, as I said a couple of times already. So just putting in brickwork, just with just some measurings of 10 mil high bricks, which are kind of 40 mil across, and then putting in the runes, putting in a big rune on the main part at the front, and then doing a tinfoil roll across the whole thing. Now, to paint them, we're going to take our black PVA, black paint and PVA mix, 50-50, and we're going to do a coat of that on everywhere that you're going to do. So you don't have to do it everywhere on the corner and the central ones, but the pillar tops will have to be painted all over. Now, once you've done that, you can take the sponge, take some grey paint, and you can mix that together and do this kind of sponging thing as you have seen on the walls and other parts as well. And it really just brings them to life so much and so quickly. And if you want any areas to look a bit more worn, then make the grey a little bit lighter by adding some white in. But yeah, it's all pretty simple to do. And this is the end result with all of it. So once you've done the grey on each and every one of them, the end result is you get pillars looking like this. And I honestly think they're fantastic. I mean, it requires a little bit of accuracy, but you can get away with being not so accurate, and but the effort is worth the result. Start off by apologising for not actually capturing the moments that I was cutting the shapes for this, but they're pretty simple. It's just 3 rectangular pieces of different depths. So take one of the thinner ones, the one you want to be the top. I'm going to score a line 2 millimeters in from each edge. We're then going to meet that with a horizontal cut that's going to just end up with looking like the edge is beveled. And that's the very, very simple way, just adding a little bit more detail to this otherwise kind of plain looking tomb. And we don't want the tomb looking particularly plain, because it is one of the main features of Balin's tomb, the kind of sarcophagus part itself. Now, to add some more detail, I'm going to take the tin foil here and just do a gentle roll here. See, I'm just using it at fingertips rather than really pushing it down firmly. Then at the top of one end, again, I'm just going to score a rectangle, just going in just a millimeter or so. And this is going to be the area in which there's going to be an inscription. So just going around in the rectangle there, and then widening that with a pencil so that it's it becomes a little bit more clear, particularly from a distance. So once that is done, you are ready to put it all together. A bit more tinfoil rolling apparently first, but yeah, that's what it looked like, all glued together. So sort of stack that up and glue it. Once that's done, we're going to do the painting that we've done on everything else. So black paint and PVA glue mixed together, and that's used as an undercoat. And then we're using the same sponging method as everywhere else. So just getting the sponge, getting off the excess, and just randomly applying it, maybe adding a bit more of a white if you want the lighter grey to be in more worn areas. And then to get into the sides a bit more, I did use the paintbrush here, because you're barely going to see that, so that the sponging type detail isn't quite as necessary. Now I'm just going to leave that to dry. From here, I then took a reference photo from the film. You'll see me actually using this in just a second here. And I tried my best to copy the inscription. It really doesn't matter. You can just chuck any old runes down you like, but it ends up looking like that. Onto the stairs. Now, these are all 50mm wide, and all they are just stacks of foam. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that. You're going to have to cut them to the length shown in the schematics, and once you've cut them to length, you can then cut a step out of them. Now, you can use a hot wire cutter for this, but you can also just use a knife. I kind of combined the two. So they are 5mm high, and they are 10mm deep. So you're going to do that at the front of each and every step, and then stacking them on top of each other, you end up with some nice, shallow, usable steps. Now, we're going to add some more detail, make them look a little bit more stony as we have across the rest of it by rolling a tinfoil ball across it. You can also just add a small amount of tinfoil to the end of the pencil there, and that allows you to get into more of the detail right up to the edge of the steps, which is difficult to do if you're using a ball. Now, from here, we are going to make the support wall. Now, this is just like any other wall that we've made, and this is just going to go on the front of the stairs where it turns the corner. So we're going to draw the runes on it. We're going to do the brickwork on it, but it's just one simple piece for each side. That's what it looks like there. And obviously, I'm going to roll it with the tinfoil ball just to make it look like the rest of it. Now, we're going to glue them together from here. So just to make sure that we've got good adhesion, if we rough up the surface, that gives the glue a bit more places to go. It makes the surface a bit more porous. That means that when they all come together, it's going to have a nice solid bond. You could just use a glue gun, but as glue guns can, the glue can dry a little bit kind of thick, which means that there's a gap between it, which is not what we want. Now, the simplest way to glue these, in my opinion, is to slap all the glue on and put them into a stack, as you'll see me doing here, but not worrying too much about the alignment of it when you're kind of putting it together initially. Because, if you align one, then when you put the next one on, you have to make sure that that first one's aligned whilst you're aligning the next one, etc., etc. So given that PVA has got a good amount of working time on it, I strongly suggest that you put them into the stack and then align them. That's going to be the much easier way to work with them. So you're going to do that with the bottom set of stairs, and you're going to do it at the top as well. Can be a little bit fiddly with the top step there. It's quite little. So what you can do is just use a straight edge of a ruler to push it against, and then you're just going to leave that to dry just like everything else. Now, I didn't want to do runes absolutely everywhere, so on this I've done a kind of zigzag detail. So just doing a 45-degree angle line and then doing another one back across it. I wasn't particularly thinking too much about the end result of this. I just went, you know what, I've drawn too many runes. I want to do something different. So zigzags across each row of the stairs, and then tinfoil ball to finish it off. And then it's ready for painting, which is our classic base coat of black paint and PVA. Going to do that across the whole thing, and then we're going to be sponging it. Now, with the sponging here, I think it really quickly makes it look really, really good. So you're going to go across all of it as you would standard, but you can see here I'm adding a little bit more white, and I'm just going to be putting that white more towards the center of the stairs, just because it really creates this kind of this nice highlight that makes it look like that area of the stairs has been a bit more worn. And then obviously you're going to do the sides as well, but I really think that looked fantastic. Now, to start with, we're going to take 20mm foam and cut a 60mm octagon out of it. Now, if you have a hot wire cutter and a polygon cutter, then, this is your time to shine. If you don't, then don't worry. I have included a printable octagon for you to print out and to stick on a bit of foam and just cut around it. Now, from here, we're going to measure in 10mm from each side, and we're going to draw parallel lines to every single side. And basically what we're doing is we're marking out a 40mm octagon inside of the 61, and this will then be cut out. And once again, you can use a hot wire cutter for this, or you can just use a sharp knife. I thought it'd be easiest to do it by setting the gate at 10mm, cutting in through one side, and then every single corner, this is on a nice low heat, every single corner you just rotate and cut to the next corner and rotate, and you rinse and repeat until you get all the way out, and you can just satisfyingly just plonk that bit out like that, and you have your well. Nice and simple. Now, from here, we have a base with which is 120 by 70, and this is just cut out 10mm foam. You're going to mark out some slabs on it. So these are going to be 40 by 40 slabs, but as it's only 70 wide, the central line is going to be 35mm, but it ends up looking like that, and the well is going to go in the center. And we're going to draw around the inside of the center of the well, and then we're going to cut that out. And this is just so the well can look like it's got a little bit more depth, because why wouldn't we want to do that? And to add some more detail, we're then taking our classic tin foil here and just lightly rubbing it across the whole thing. And then we're going to add brick detail to the entirety of the well. So as you can see, I'll just kind of rotating the knife around the edge, then carving in the bricks, and then adding more of the stony detail with the tin foil. And then to kind of widen this all with the pencil just to kind of get the look completed. So, this is a slightly long-winded process, and I did the inside as well because I'm a completionist, but essentially all you're really doing is just drawing bricks on it and putting the tinfoil on it. And then I kind of glued it down using some strong glue. You could use hot glue gun here, no reason not to in particular. I think I must have just had the glue out, and just going to hold that in place until it's set. And then it's going to be ready for painting. And just with everything else, we're going to do a black paint with PVA undercoat. I'm going to hold that in place with something else. And then we're going to sponge the whole thing just like we have with every other piece. And that is finished. This is going to be one of the more interesting videos in the series because I'm going to show you how I made this, but I'm also going to say that you shouldn't make it like this at all. So you'll see if you open up the plans, I've done something entirely differently there. I was working from reference photos. There's nothing wrong with how this door ends up looking. The way in which it is made is completely different. So I recommend that instead of taking 4 individual planks, which are just a few mils thick, and then making all of these little planks and putting them on top and gluing them and scoring individual detail on them, that you just make one big chunk for each door. So taking a piece that's maybe 10mm thick, cutting off the angle that's shown in the schematics, and from there you can, rather than doing all the little details on all the little pieces here, you can do the little details on just the one big piece, just going directly into the foam. It will be so much quicker. It will be so much less fiddly, and you won't have to do, this kind of stuff like that. It's going to look like that, but it's going to be on the door as not individual planks. So yeah, you can just mess around. I just wanted to make the door look a little bit more fancy, so I kind of added these kind of zigzag details and some diamond shapes, and that's kind of what it looks like in the film. If you wanted to make a movie accurate one, it would be very different. But the door itself is actually pretty simple to make if you do it not in this style, because it is just 2 pieces essentially. It's one piece which makes up the kind of wooden part of it. And we don't do the bracing pieces that I'm about to show you that I'm making here. But, you could make these if you wanted to. But, yeah, essentially it's 2 pieces. It's one piece which is the wooden part, and it's one piece which is the metal part, the kind of the metal frame. So, essentially, you're cutting one piece which is 10mm thick, and then you're going to scribe all the details in as if you're, doing the door that you can see at the front of the frame now. And then another piece which is kind of 2mm thick, and it's the same kind of cross section, but it's only 2mm thick. And then I'm cutting, parallel lines to cut out a frame like that. So 2 wooden pieces, 2 metal pieces, and that's it. Rather than the kind of dozen or so pieces that I've used in this video. That's part of good enough scenery thing here. I make the mistake so you don't have to. So that's kind of the benefit of buying the guide or having access to this guide. But yes, stick the frame to the front of that, apply some weight on it so that it kind of holds nice and firmly. And then we're going to prime this with PVA mixed with black paint, leave that to dry, and that's a nice solid base for us to be working with. And then from there, using whichever colors you want. So this is a brown from Vallejo paints, and doing that across all of the wooden areas, nice and simple. It doesn't matter if you go on the metal frame, because you're going to paint over that with something like lead belcher after that. And then to add some wear after that, the way in which I did that, I mean, you could use Agrax Earthade or like a wash, something like that, but I used a sponge and some Rhinox hide, as you'll see in a second, and I just gently sponged this over a few areas just to make it look a little bit more worn. It's a very, very simple way of just adding, random parts of color onto a door, make it look a little bit rusty. So very, very simple way of doing that. So doing that across both doors, and they are done, ready to be stuck down in a minute. So making the floor tiles is pretty simple. Just like the rest of the floor, I wanted to have 4cm square tiles. So to begin with, I took some scrap or things that have been left over from other things and just cut 10mm thick foam into 40mm thick strips. Cut a whole bunch of these, as you will see right here. But those would be way too thick as floor tiles, so I needed to change things up. You notice I've also got some other strips there which are 20mm thick and 10mm thick, because it's not going to be a perfect floor to just do in sections of 40 by 40 tiles. So with these pieces cut into strips, I then made them a lot thinner by setting my Proxxon hot wire cutter down to a very kind of small, kind of a couple of mil, maybe 3mm thick, and then just made every single one into a strip that was just not very deep at all. It doesn't really matter how thick it is, as long as they're all uniform, but I wanted to make mine about 2 or 3mm thick. From here, it's just a case of making them into tiles. So the big strips, I kind of drew a line every 40mm, so we've got our squares. I ended up not really using many as big things like this, but you can see here it's a very simple thing just to make them into the tile sizes, then to create the texture with the tinfoil roll, and then to use a pencil just to kind of make those markings just a little bit more obvious. But you can snap them into pieces as well. You can see on this one here, just cutting it off, and then you can just have some fun with it. So to begin with, do a tinfoil roll on it, and then after you've done that, just getting the knife and just kind of just randomly cutting it, and then you've got a couple of kind of broken pieces which can be next to each other as a whole thing, or they can be used kind of in entirely different parts of the board. Obviously, want to do similar things with the 20mm wide strips. So these are 20mm by 4mm for each tile, because there are going to be some side bits, some spaces that need filling in. So, nothing complicated here. It's just using your imagination. You want a hell of a lot of tiles that are just normal, but you also want a bunch of tiles which, are interesting in some way, so that we can get that floor, to look interesting itself. One thing that's quite nice to do is, depending on how old this floor is, or how long you think it's been, or how worn it is, rather than having just perfectly square tiles, just start cutting corners off and pressing a little bit harder with the tinfoil, because that can create some natural breaks and deviations in the edges, so that they don't look perfectly uniform. Because we don't want it to look like it's a floor that's just been laid. We want it to look a little broken. So nothing particularly complicated about all this. Just cut them into the sort of sizes that I'm talking about, and then have some fun in terms of making them different shapes. You can just snap them like that. That works too. But then just so you don't have the foamy type edge, just crush it down with a tinfoil roll, and yeah, job is a good one, as I've never said before in my entire life, but apparently today was the first time for me to do that. Now from here, undercoat them in black. This is the black and PVA mix that I've used across the board and the rest of it. Do that with all of it. You don't need to see me painting loads of these, but once these are dry, they are ready for sticking down. We'll paint them once they're down. Making rubble for this is pretty simple. So just take whatever offcuts you've got from elsewhere on the project, and you just basically cut it into random shapes. So for me, I decided I wanted to have some like octagonal type columns. So as you can see, I just cut like a square column shape and then kind of carve the corners off. This isn't me being completely accurate or measuring anything. It's just randomly cutting and then snapping them in half, then taking a big bit and cutting that into pieces and cutting those into even smaller pieces. Just random pieces that look like they could have been broken off something, fallen off something, And then from there, just adding a little bit more wear. So either using a knife to kind of carve into it a bit, or, you know, using the tinfoil here just to add some more kind of stone type detail. And from there, this is kind of a slightly long-winded case of just undercoating every single one. So I want to get into every single detail, but these are going to be stuck down, so you can choose to just not do it on one side. You can also opt to wear gloves. I just don't normally, because I just wash my hands afterwards, because I know I'm going to be a mucky pup, so I might as well just get it done. Now, for the little bits, I did a little bit differently here. I actually just chucked them all into the remaining undercoat stuff that I've got here, mix it all round, and then just essentially spread it out on a bit of cardboard, trying to kind of spread it out as much as possible, and then left that somewhere to dry. And this served two purposes. First of all, it did undercoat it, which was the main purpose. But when it came to adding the sponging detail and the like in a few moments' time, it meant all these little pieces were actually held in place a little bit by the glue. So rather than holding a tiny bit in my hand and trying to add some sponging detail, it was held in place. But yes, that is the next step, doing the sponging that you've done across the rest of the project. So again, dropping that on the floor. No, that's what it looks like. Getting chokras, there it is. So just adding a little sponging detail. You can again use some lighter bits on the bit you want to be looking a bit more worn. But other than that, it's just a simple thing. Basically, all you're doing in this stage, cutting things into little pieces, undercoating them black, and then sponging them grey. As simple as that. And it's something that's really simple, but adds something really nice to the end of the project. So if you're at the point where you've got all of your pieces made, then we can start piecing it all together. But first, a few more cuts to do. So what I'm doing here is cutting some supports. So these are 70mm high. It doesn't particularly matter about the width. You're also going to have to cut a couple which are 40mm high. Now these are going to be attached. Now I've used a glue gun here. You can attach it with anything you want, and they are going to be aligned with the bottom of the walls, and they are going to support the floor at the back. I mean, it's potentially not necessary, but it's a few minutes effort just to make it all a bit more sturdy. So that's going to be on all of the walls. So the 70mm ones are going to go across the whole thing. The 40mm ones are going to have to go here. You'll see at the bottom of the stairs. Now the position isn't particularly important as long as it's not interfering with anything else. Now, onto the construction of the sides here. So I've got my variable temperature hot glue gun. I've got a link in the things to this. So this means you can put on lower temperature things, so you can work a bit more accurately and you don't end up with those annoying strings of glue. So I'm putting it inside of the edge of this. This is upside down, then sliding in the piece here horizontally, and that means that when you're squidging the glue down, it's not squidging downwards, which is actually towards the top. It's going more into the recess. I mean, they fit pretty snugly anyway, but this just finishes them off quite nicely. So doing that on both sides, and you have a piece that ends up looking like that. You also need to be putting the walls in here. Now, what I did here was held a bit of foam, and I'm just marking out where 10mm is in, so that I can make sure I'm putting the glue in the right place. But also making sure I've got my runes the right way up. Not that that matters even slightly, but it was something that was important to me at the time of construction. And just sliding this in very carefully. I mean, it should again be a pretty nice snug fit. If it isn't, then it doesn't matter too much because you're using hot glue, and that can space it all out a little bit. And then going across and doing the other ones as well. Nothing particularly complicated about this. And obviously, as you can see, my set square, using the set square to make sure that they are nice and sturdy. Now I put an extra bit of foam in there just because there was a gap and it was bothering me, and I wanted it to be a bit more secure. Now, with the this is the back bit of floor, well, the back walkway. So I put a mark in so that I knew exactly where the piece was going to be glued, and then just glued the bottom of it to these support bits. It helps if you don't let it fall down like that. But the positioning of this isn't particularly complicated, and using hot glue, it sets pretty quickly. So just doing both sides of that to make sure that is nice and sturdy. So you can put it in place, you get a little bit of working time, but the good thing is it actually lines up perfectly with the floor slabs, so that's great. And we're doing a similar thing with the walls here at the back, and we're going to do this at the walls at the side. Just put some glue on the edges and slotting it in. Obviously, it's not so much slotting on the end pieces because we don't have a pillar to be going up against yet. So yeah. And you can make this even more secure by running a bead of glue along the inside edge. Probably not necessary at all, but I did it, so you get to see it. So the edge pieces, we're just going to do the two edges, which are going to be butted up against the thing, putting it in place, and then using the set square just to make sure that that is vertical, and it's not really any more complicated than that. And that will finish your, so if you've done both side walkways and you've done your back walkway, then that's all the work that you need to be doing on it, really. So I went on and did a dry fit of this to just see how well it came together. And this one was just fractionally too big. And I mean, literally, I think about 1.5 mils. So I'm just trimming that off. And once I did that, the fit was so good that I probably didn't even need glue. But I did use glue, obviously. Now for the front wall, we're going to take our front support walls. We're going to put some glue down the edge, which is going to be glued, and we've previously marked on, well, I previously marked on, and I told you to in the plans, exactly where these are going. So just align them with those lines, make sure it's aligned with the top and bottom, and you can use a set square to make sure that it is nice and perpendicular, and then you're going to do the same on the other side. Nothing particularly complicated with this. It's just a case of sticking the piece in the right position and making it aligned. But apparently I'm showing you the other one as well, just in case you didn't believe that I did it, but you can see here that I did. But it's good to be complete about these things, I think. Now, once I had all those pieces down and glued all together, I thought it was a good idea to do a real just test run of where everything was going to go, and then mark out the floor such that I knew exactly where every piece was going to go. Now, whether this is necessary or whether it isn't, I'm not entirely sure, but I decided that it would be a good idea to do it so that I knew, so sometimes you've got good working time with glue. If you're using a glue gun, maybe you've not got so much good working time. And if you get it in the wrong position, it ends up just all being a little bit messy. So this took a bit of time, but it didn't take forever. So whether you decide to do this or not is entirely up to you, but it ended up looking like that. And I decided that at this point, I'll be honest, a lot of this build I was making up as I went along. A lot of it was the plan, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with the floor, so I decided to do a tinfoil roll on all of the parts which would be showing. It ended up being that was probably a little bit pointless. Now on to actually putting it all together. So I started with the front wall because I thought that was probably going to be the most important, and this is just literally a case of putting it into place. Now, you'll notice that, the corners where I cut the miters, ended up being a bit of an issue for me. This is why I really suggest that you just don't bother. Just make just follow the schematics and don't do the miters, and you'll not have to mess around with, not perfectly cut 45-degree angles like I did. So there was a lot of farting around for me when I constructed this. If you've got nice straight edges and follow the schematics, then this will just be an absolute breeze. So this took me probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 times as long because of the miters, which I cut for no apparent reason. So my point is, don't cut the miters. But what you're really doing here is you're just putting glue on the edges which can be glued, you're aligning them with the sides, and you're slotting it all together, and just waiting for that to dry, which, given that you're using your glue gun, doesn't take very long at all. But this is really satisfying to see it all come together, and this how accurately things have been measured is pleasing to me. So I used PVA. I think this is like strong PVA, like wood glue, to glue the sides together. This, we've got a good amount of working time. So glue on the top of the supports and glue on the pillars as well. I mean, like I said, the fit on this was so good, it might not have even been necessary. So doing one side, doing the back, and then doing the other side as well, and you'll see that slot in just a second. But yeah, nothing complicated with this at all, just putting glue on and gluing it. This is like the last yards when you've done all of the work. This is the easy bit. This is the bit where all your work starts to come together. You see how nice and tight that fit is. So like I said, glue maybe not even necessary, but obviously I did glue it. So from here, again, this is a part where I wasn't sure if I'd made it, how to do it exactly. And I decided that the steps should actually cut into the side of the walkway rather than have the stairs just stepped back a bit. That's already included in your schematic, so you don't have to do this, but you can see that I'm doing it. So yeah, very, very simple case here with the stairs. Once you cut that bit here just slots up to that, like so. So yeah, nothing complicated. And just putting the stairs down, you've already got the position completely defined by the front support wall and the front wall itself. So just putting some glue on and slotting that into the corner. And then for this, then there's the stair support wall, which goes just at the front of the stairs here, so that the top part of the stairs has got something to attach to. So just putting that into place, making sure it's vertical, and then adding some glue to the top of that, and adding some glue to the 40mm support that you glued on a little bit earlier. And that's all that you need in order to position the top stairs. Very, very quickly, it's all just come together. Then obviously doing the same on the other side. Now, putting the well in, I think I just eyeballed this. This is going in the center of the back, so the back position is defined, and it's just making sure it's in the middle. So I think I'd drawn the lines earlier, so I knew exactly where this was going, and I knew exactly where this was going. The schematics, the bird's eye view schematics, will show you exactly how far in it should be, should you wish to do it, having not marked out everything. But yeah, the well goes in the center at the back, and the tomb goes in the dead center. Now to do the floor. So all the floor tiles are already cut, although they're not painted at this point. And then from here, I just did it in sections. So the front section is 160mm across, which means 4 full 40mm tiles will fit in. So I decided that was a good place to start. And this is very much a case of me just picking up a tile and deciding how it should go. So there are full tiles, there's broken tiles, there's half tiles, there's places where the tiles are missing. And it's very much just a free form thing of, it's very difficult. I mean, there's no wrong, really. It's just going with whatever you feel like looks right. Maybe thinking ahead about where you might want to put some rubble down, thinking about where things might be more worn, more broken, but just, a few bits at a time, add a bit more glue, add some more tiles, add a bit more glue, add some more tiles, and just go through the process until the whole thing is full up. So you see I've left some gaps there. And then, with the glue still in place, this is immediately after putting down, just chucking some flock down. So there was some coal type things. I put that, so it's very black stone. There's this, which is, I think, urban scatter or something like that. Just a sprinkle of that. And this is like a very fine grey stone flock, it's called, from Javis Scenics, and then just a little jiggle of the tomb itself, and then chuck a load of heavy things inside to make sure the floor is being held down. And I decided to actually do the sponging with the floor in place rather than having to sponge individual tiles. So once it was dry, just going over and sponging the entire thing, and just adding a bit more of the lighter colour in areas which I felt would be more worn. Now it's time to put the rubble down. So to put the rubble down, just some spots of some PVA glue, and just putting things down where I thought they should be. So typically a larger block followed by some little blocks. Gluing the door into place as well. And you could just have that as scattered terrain. You could have it anywhere. I've got mine glued down. And then adding tiny little bits of rubble as well. And it really was as simple as that. Now, finally, onto the paper, the tiny little pages. So you have a bit of it reminds me of being at school where you had to do like an old document. So a bit of tea stain there. If the oven's on, you can dry it in the oven, cut the paper into tiny little pieces. Very, very simple like this. And then just sticking these down with PVA glue wherever felt like the right position. And then I finish mine off with some dead dwarf skeletons, which you can have 3D printed if that is something that you want to add in to make your Balin's tomb
like mine.